DJ Lamonga is dressed by Tallboy Wear. Find them at 10A Goldman Street, Florida, Johannesburg.
This episode was recorded at COPA, Africa's leading contemporary music institution, situated at 14 Park Crescent, Riverview Office Park, Midrand. For more information, visit www.copasa.co.za.
There's a point when we used to sell my cassette, my brother and I used to sell empty cassettes. Bro, all over Jersey, from Jersey to...
Wait, you're competing with the guy with TDK?
My empty cassette. In fact, he used to live in the same area, Mfulo.
What?
That dude, the guy who he used to be at Small Street.
Yes.
Yes, he used to live in Mfulo, if I'm not mistaken. And, but we weren't selling on the streets per se. We used to go to my hostel, bro, like house to house. George Koch, JP Hostel. My brother and I, guys, the things that I kid you not, bro.
What?
I kid you not. We went through all of that. And what forced me to record a song, Cocoa Dreams, that speaks to my tragedy, which was my healing. The song was my healing, was the fact that close friends of mine and strangers that I've never met suddenly saw me as a beacon of hope for the loss of a child, for support for the loss of a child, because the loss of a child is something that is so unique. It's unnatural. We're supposed to go first. They get left behind, right? Not the other way around. Some things you need to almost confront them before they happen. You need to confront your pain before it happens. Okay, so as I'm growing old, I am going to lose my mother. I am going to lose my dad. How am I going to feel? Sit there and experience it. Try and experience it as much as you can. I've done that,
Aren't you traumatizing yourself though? Can you just wait so that it happens?
It's coming.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Let's pretend like we haven't been hanging for 5 minutes.
Hey, how are you?
Let's do it like we do it for TV.
Clear, my brother?
Kishapona.
Easy, man.
Sure.
Easy.
I sat down with Proverb and I thought everybody knew where Proverb was from. So I brushed through it. And hey, they grilled me in the comments. So I don't want to pretend here now.
Great interview, by the way.
Thank you.
Probably I saw that.
Thank you. So who are you and where are you from?
That's a tough question. Yanamoto, who are you?
No. The thing is, we'll circle back to who are you now?
Who are you now? Umuntu goes through a mild existential crisis when the question is asked, Who are you? Oh my gosh. Man, I'm a myriad of things and characters and people all in one, I think, But right now, I am Zenzele, formerly known as Sea Live, right now, in this stage in my life, I am just a normal guy, as opposed to the Sea Live that you know.
What?
I promise you. I'm just an everyday guy.
Now, where were you born? And obviously, that the name that came back into your life currently that you are pushing. And how was it growing up?
I was born in KZN, Durban. Grew up partly in Durban and then partly in the North Coast in Esikhaweni. And then we left Esikhaweni, we came to Jersey in the 90s. Been here ever since. Growing up was tough. It was tough growing up, man. Just going through all the trials and tribulations of life. Struggle, financial struggle in the family, emotional struggle. Adolescence. Because a lot happens in that phase. My goodness, I'm just. shocked at how we survived that stage of our lives. Because it's a break it or make it at that stage. A lot of things are just so. The world is such a big place at that point in time when you're young, and it feels so overwhelming, and you feel like this little tiny seed in this big universe. But somehow you go through it and you make it. My dad was no pushover. He was a very hard man, So he put us through the grills, through the through the hoops and the jumps, every last bit of it that you can imagine. There was a point where, I never tell the story. There's a point when we used to sell my cassette, my brother and I used to sell empty cassettes, bro, all over Jozi, from Jozi to.
Wait, you're competing with the guy with TDK?
My empty cassette. In fact, he used to live in the same area, Mfulo.
What?
That dude, the guy who he used to be at Small Street.
Yes.
He used to live in Mfulo, if I'm not mistaken, and but we weren't selling on the streets per se. We used to go to my hostel, bro, like house to house. George Koch, JP Hostel. My brother and I, guys, the things that I kid you not, bro.
What?
I kid you not. We went through all of that, and I don't know if I should jump there. But
Jump. Let's go.
And I think that's how I discovered Le Club. Partly, I'm sorry, my memory is kind of faded, but it was between library and that. I was like, hey, bro, on a Saturday, there are kids
hanging around here.
Yeah, but maybe I'm moving too fast.
No.
In the conversation.
You're moving perfectly.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to find out that, the podcast is called The Third Element of Hip Hop, right? And you're the first person I'm intentionally asking this based on the 5 elements, right? How did you meet hip hop?
As I said, it was between that, selling cassettes all over Jozi on a Saturday, and the library. I don't know if it was me going to the library but at some point I was walking past 154 Market Street. And I'm like, hey, well, okay, that looks like my age group. There's girls, okay. There's gents, because at that time I was living in the east of Jozi in Kensington, Bears Valley, and in that area at that time there weren't many black people. So living in an area where there are not many black people, you don't know where to socialize. So chiggy, here we are. I'm finding these people in town. I was back the next week. I went in. I'm like, hey, this is amazing.
You walk in, what's the first thing that you do?
I don't know. I can't remember. It's that far.
But I'm trying to get to a point that you were a b-boy when you started.
Oh, you mean like that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I walked in. I started rapping, man. Became an MC, because it's the low-lying fruit, right? Yeah, you walk into the game. It's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to do much,
Hence,
to a point.
Yes. Hence I'm asking.
Yeah.
You've done all 3.
All
B-boy, rapper, DJ.
Graffiti.
Even that?
Yeah, I did graffiti, bro. Went from MC to graffiti, and there was a point when we used to all attend ciphers at YFM, Gandhi Square, all that stuff. And then I realized, no, man, this is not for me, the other boys are miles ahead, because back then we were up against the likes of
Snaz D.
Snaz D was the god of, you know what I mean? He was the guy, and undisputed. We're up against Gundi,
Robo.
You know what I mean? A whole entourage or barrage of MCs, and I'm talking about real MCs. So to break into that was something else. You know what I mean? If you're not dealing with those Joburg MCs, you're dealing with the Cape Townian MCs, because they'd come up as well. And Shem, it would be a bar fest.
Now I know your brother as a b-boy also.
Yeah.
You leave the mic to do the same, or you introduce him to it?
I left the mic, became a break dancer, and that's how my brother joined me. That's how we formed the group Static B-Boys with DJ Switch, Versatile. In fact, we had Moses in the group as well. Moses is another legendary name. In fact, he used to be, he wasn't part of Static B-Boys, my bad. He used to be one of the breakers at Le Club. So when the club starts at 1 p.m., the matinee starts at 12 p.m. Sorry, there's breakdancing lessons and there's DJ lessons at the same time, and then the club starts. So I would be in the DJ lessons. In fact, the b-boy, that's where I was. I started first the b-boy, right? B-boy, did my b-boy thing, and then I was DJing at the same time, and we formed the group Static B-Boys, and we really did our thing, at the time.
How did you leave the group, and how did they take it?
Oh man, I left the group. I became a bit, outgrew the group. I was the eldest, and life was taking me in a different direction. My son was born, and I couldn't be spinning on my head. I couldn't be spinning on my head. This little man needs nappies, he needs milk. Spinning a card. There's no money in this. There's no money. And also, being the eldest, I think life just demanded a different version of me, and I was curious as well. In the sense that I wanted to know more, and it wasn't enough for me to just be, doing flips and, windmills and etc. It wasn't enough. I needed more. I was interested in the business side of it as well. I was interested in the marketing and everything, So I was grabbing as much as I could, soaking in as much as I could.
And then you make a move to do clubs as a DJ.
Oh man, I mean, while I was a b-boy, I was also a DJ, and this DJing thing took off, And I'll tell you this, by the way, Snaz D gave me the name C Live.
For real?
Yeah. It was.
What has happened for him to?
No, so I forgot. I was supposed to play a set, I think, because we had the DJ school, Lepana, and I was part of it, and. Shout out to Blaze and Bionic, by the way. I'm not gonna, let that moment pass without
legendary
their flowers.
kings.
Those are my mentors, and I used to be there, very helpful. I used to help around, etc. And so now the countdown happens. Snaz D's on stage, ladies and gentlemen. It's like, yo, bro, what's your name? What do we call you? We can't call you Clive. Ladies and gentlemen, C Live. You can't take that back. You're C Live now, you know what I mean? It's like, oh well.
Wow.
Yeah, so then that's where the DJing side of things really took off. And I remember my first commercial gig, man. In fact, just let's reel it back a bit. The DJ side of things was really, really amazing for me, because then I really got to build a name and and create a bit of a following, before followers, and it was genuine, it was authentic, because then you would have the same group of people follow you everywhere. You know what I mean?
Your name means a lot on a flyer.
It means a lot on a flyer. They don't just follow you here on the phone and sit at home and watch you. They actually follow you everywhere you go, and it was beautiful, man. Because, when we played vinyl, we all didn't have the same songs. It was impossible for us to have the same songs. So, excuse me, Blaze was well known for being the Wu-Tang guy. He had the entire discography. He'll play you any song from Wu-Tang.
Wow.
He's that guy. He played a lot of East Coast rap. No, he played a lot of West Coast rap, if I'm not mistaken. And then Bionic was that other guy. Bionic would give you the Raucous Records joints. He'd give you the boom bap, that other sound. You know what I mean? And me, I was a bit of a mix of both to an extent, So as I said, you'd have a following because you play a specific style and sound, and only you have that specific record. You know what I mean? So that's how I built my following, and it was beautiful, man, from vinyl to vinyl,
Now, if you're practicing or when you're at a DJ school, it's one thing, but if you are now at your first gig, tell me what happened on that first gig.
I'm not, I can't remember my first gig, but I can tell you about the highlights, you know, moments that I'd never forget. I think the first time I saw my name on a flyer, there was a gig at Roxy's in Melville. I was excited, you know, me and my crew going to Roxy's. And I think DJ Drama was in the country at the same gig, if I'm not mistaken. And they spelled my name wrong. C Lice.
Oh man.
I'm like, guys, you had one job. One job. This is my breakout gig.
And they've probably printed 5,000 flyers already.
But, you know, for me, that was one of the key moments. You know, I remember because I was genuinely hurt.
You're really upset.
My breakout moment, bro. Slice. Like, I mean.
So were you nervous? Because sometimes playing
Of course.
with vinyl, and you have your first crowd, sometimes you even take the song that you're playing at the time. Did that happen?
Oh, no. No, not then. I mean, I was a sober-minded kid. Sober-minded. You don't make those mistakes at that stage, you know what I mean? That's usually alcohol-related mistakes. You know?
Sure.
Of course I was nervous. I'm always nervous. You know, I was nervous last week playing, you know?
Sure.
It's just the nature of this job.
Sharp.
Yeah, you know.
And how did YFM pick you up? Or as a guest DJ?
So hip-hop culture was growing in the streets. And obviously, you know, your media, your corporates, your brands, they always look for pioneers in the game. It's okay, so
Not influencers.
real pioneers. you
Yeah.
know, and I'm glad we're back to that stage right now where it's not really about influencers now, it's about pioneers. You know, so they looked out for pioneers. Okay, so here's this growing genre. We see it. We can see this movement in the streets. The kids love that. Who are the leaders? You know, let's capture the leaders. You know, and okay, Sila Zagala. You know, because obviously I came after the Bradleys and the Bionics and the Biggers and the Ready D's. You know, so obviously the next gen after that is me. You know, so Bob Bionic will take me everywhere. You know, I'd follow them everywhere they went as well. So when the opportunity arose, come play on radio, man. Come play a set, you know. Play a set on Mosquito Show, play a set on Fresher Show, play a set on Fat Joe's, you know what I mean? Like that. Go to Castle Loud, fill in for Ready D, stand in for Ready D, you know what I mean? And that was one of my biggest moments, by the way, standing in for Ready. You remember Castle Loud?
Yeah.
It used to happen
With
at the...
Stone and Unati.
With Stone...
Not the TV show.
100%, the TV show.
Yes.
Yeah. And they had Ready D, right? As the DJ. And Ready D... No. There was it Stone and... I forgot, but there was
Ready
one...
was on the Fat Joe show.
Yes, you're right. So there were times when I would stand in for Ready D as well on some of the... even the Fat Joe show as well. You know, and these for me were huge, pivotal moments. Yo, man. Ready D.
Ready D.
You know what I mean?
Even the platform on its own was huge.
It was huge.
What was the feedback after that show?
Oh man, come on! I was at my peak. Come on, you know what I mean? Like, you're standing for Ready D, you're at your peak, you know. But obviously the game was different. You know? Yeah, you're at your peak, but you're not a house DJ. But you're not a house DJ.
Canada was that challenge. You know,
Yeah.
where hip hop was being played around 7 at an event. You basically
15 minutes or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We're back to that, by the way. We're back to that. But yeah, man, it was that was me at my peak. You know, YFM was happening. I was getting gigs on YFM. You know, playing sets on YFM on AK and Lee's show. I mean, I did Bad Boy T, Lee and Sansa as well. But I was a resident on AK and Lee's show.
Yeah, no, I remember. See, Lisa.
Staple diet. Yeah. I was the staple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I started doing production at Y. So
Technical production or content production?
technical production. I mean, was there content then? You were just a producer. There was a producer.
Yeah.
The term content producer just wasn't a thing. It was just a producer.
Yeah.
But I did technical production because I knew my way around the computer and I knew my way around production tools. And I was producing skits, producing a whole lot of things for
From GAG?
no, not from GAG. GAG, that show had its own producer.
Okay.
But for Lee, I did the Hot 99. I did the Hot 99 for Lee, and I would do a few other things as well, just around the station for different shows, And but my real job then became the Hot 99. I would do the Hot 99 for Bobby, for Lee, the different genres as well, because I think there were 4 or 5 of them. Hot 99 house, Hot 99 hip hop, that kind of thing.
Kwaito.
Yeah. So I would record all those talents, And my big break came when I first got onto the mic and started presenting a show. Came when, Lee stopped doing the Hot 99, and I was like, okay, Mr. Kenton, play.
Did you send a demo or how did it happen? What was the process?
I was trying to avoid that question.
One,
I'm trying to avoid it. So what happened was, it's not a secret, but what happened was I was with Lee in studio, and she happened to drop. We'd been through a whole preaching speech by Kenton Pillay. We don't want water in studio, drinks in studio. And we had this huge mixing desk, and we were recording, and Lee kind of pushed a glass of water over, and it spilled all over the mixing desk. Honest mistake, but
expensive mistake.
Apparently 250K mistake, but I don't know. So obviously then, heads have to roll. And shame, Lee was doing very well. We know what amount of work that Lee did for hip hop, and Mr. Pillay at the time was on a serious trip.
I have to show. I have to act.
Yeah. So now, here we are. Lee's gone with immediate effect. Mr. Kenton, what do we do? You are next. You are next on the show. Go record. I'm like, yo,
Lee's my girl.
Lee's my girl. I called Lee, same time, bro. Lee, yo, here's what's just happened. She's like, listen, take the job, and I get it. I get it. Take the job. I'm like, Vele, I was gonna take it. I mean, some opportunities come in the most ugliest of ways. You know what I mean? Sometimes your predecessor passes away, and you know what I mean?
Don't put it like that.
No, I'm saying that's what happens. That's just life, right?
That's life.
Yeah. But here you are happy in your new job, but it comes at a cost, So I got into that position, and then everything else after that was history, man. My radio career really kicked off then. Yeah, I've got a show now, and.
Are you aware now how the landscape changed in terms of, actually, let's break down the word crate diggers. Because I see you as one.
100%.
Introducing new sound to people. And I mean, when I was checking your bio, I'm like, half of the people here I don't know. You literally spot talent.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, bro. It's such a gorgeous thing to do, That's what a DJ does, right? A DJ is a tastemaker. That's what we are. And we I don't know if we still are, but yeah, we
supposed
to be, responsible for introducing new sounds, new music. And for me, that's always been a thing. I could never skim off the top and say, yo, let's do a song, Not that I'd say no, but it's always nicer being the person behind a brand new artist. I feel like that's always been the duty in the hip hop industry. It's always been that responsibility you take on. Which I have to, pull with me these young boys and girls,
Do you think that's the reason maybe hip hop took a backseat because not a lot of people did that?
I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a myriad of reasons why it would have taken a backseat. It's a delicate balance as well. You can't also fill up the game with too many new faces. There needs to be, There's a natural process that happens, and none of us are in control of that process. Unless you're speaking about gatekeeping. Pause.
So, I don't know if you're aware, and I've told you multiple times, and every time I talk to you, you become awkward, and you feel you be like, hey man, are you dying? Literally, you said that to me twice. Are you dying? Every time when I say to you, yo man, I don't know how I could have been in the game because my first song was played by you on air. And that track was not even mixed. It was Game Over by Tooks. That song ended up on the playlist. It then played on DJ's Bush show. Everybody played the song now.
Yeah.
And I can never forget that. The first time my song played on radio, it was through you. And I pick up that social pages, shows anyway. So it's probably Ifani.
Ifani, a.k.a. JR. Yo, man, the list goes on.
What?
And the list goes on, bro. The list goes on.
What is it that you look... What was happening at the time?
It's hip-hop, bro. It's hip-hop. I mean, I learned from my predecessors, Uchi. When you drop a mixtape, we want to hear something we've never heard before. You need to tell us, let us know who is the next big thing. You as the DJ, and also it's a bit of an ego thing, I think. Hey, I discovered AKA, you know what I mean? Imagine that, having that on your bio. It's got a big thing. Like, having the skill to uplift and uproot new faces, new voices. It takes quite a lot of, it takes big balls to do that, because you are not thinking about yourself. To an extent. As I said, it's partly egotistical as well. It's a great feeling to know that, hey, I've
done this, yeah.
But it's a risk to begin with when you start off. There's no guarantees. Uguchi, this Ifani kid that you brought up is going to be a big thing. There's no guarantees Uguchi he's going to equal your listenership, Why not just grab a famous face and put them on? Lazy work, right? Easy work. Bring AKA or bring whoever's famous, go sleep, You
are done.
Yeah, but being tapped in requires a lot more. It requires you to be there on the ground. It requires you to know what's happening in the game, So it's an all-encompassing a process, which I guess it cemented the radio station's decision to have me, as, you know what I mean, and we did that throughout the years. I mean, even Namanje, I still look for new talent, new faces, and it's.
Hey. We'll say his details.
Yes, okay.
Stop bothering Nasi. Anyway, your move to 5. What happened?
My move to 5, man. Yes. So I had outgrown Wire. I think like the rate at which I consume experiences is quite fast. I've got a high metabolism, and I think I'd outgrown it, and Vugile Zondi was the program manager at Y, and then he moved to 5. When he moved to 5, I'm thinking to myself, man, logically thinking, if I move from a regional station to a national, that means more money, Mos. That means more, more bookings throughout SA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then it's my time to grow. Now I'm just
makes sense.
Stifled.
Yeah.
I can't just be playing Lana, Katlehong, You know what I mean? But I mean, YFM had a good reach. But
Yes.
I wanted to reach out to the rest of SA. I want to play in Cape Town. I want to play, you know what I mean, everywhere.
You get there, was it the truth of what?
No. Far from it. Far from it. You know, firstly, you know, the power of YFM, I realized it then, which is, damn, YFM, even though it's a regional station, it has a powerful connection to black people. So, your black people love hip hop, right? Black people love hip hop. It's a black culture, right? So you'll play at all these little clubs and establishments in this small circuit. Durban, Nakona, you'll go because you had, there was a bit of a reach, you know. But Five didn't have that. Five's listenership is predominantly white. The establishments are white. So when you move, they are taking your listenership, of course. They want you and your listeners. So you migrate with your listeners and they follow you. Shem. It's easy to switch, right?
Sure.
Switch the dial, easy. My show had such a high listenership in comparison to the others. I only discovered this late, you know, but because, you know, Fresh and Euphonica are the icons, you think, you end up, you think, no, you know, these
They're
are guys.
killing it, yeah.
And then, of course, you know, they celebrated as such as well on the station, you know, only to find out later that my show is kicking ass. I was mad.
Hip Hop Power Nights.
I'm like, why are you keeping this information from me? You know, I should be running this shit. I should be running this thing, you know. The listenership followed me to the station. Great. But when, as I said,
The money didn't follow you.
the money did not follow because when it translates to gigs, it's white establishments and they are booking it because you're on the station. Black people in their numbers do not listen to 5FM. So you don't get...
Or go to those establishments.
What, the black establishments?
No, the white establishments. I get it from you doing the hip hop show.
100%.
Yeah, they come to those establishments.
What do you mean? You mean it's the station?
Your followers from the station, do they come to the event?
No, of course not. You see, that's where the dilemma comes in.
Now you have to switch it up when you're at the club.
What's Teppo from Deep Kloof doing at Movida with white people? You know, white people playing pop music. I mean, it's a culture. You know what I mean?
And you come from the underground. I mean, the club was
100%.
now Ugola Vid.
Which is fine. You know, to an extent. You know, because we want to expand this thing. But now, 5FM has got fundamental issues, cultural issues, that you cannot take this stuff to Movida. You go to Movida, you must play pop. Milkshake is a testament to this. He knows this as well. Miss Cosmos saw it as well. You know, all my predecessors and successors went through the same thing. You know,
And there's no gig guide at 5.
no gig guide at 5. You will go and play at Plettenberg Bay or whatever, Plettenberg. You'll go and play at J Bay, all these amazing events. You are the only black DJ there. You are playing hip hop. What the fuck, bro? You know what I mean? You are playing hip hop. Why are you playing hip hop? So now you have to convert because you are an anomaly in this entire station. You came in as a purist. You are now stuck in this thing. Now you're converting. Now you're losing yourself. You are not making money anyway. You know, it's wild.
Was there any regret while you were there or no?
100%.
My check is not looking the same.
100%. I mean, the white check was good, bro. Was good. At the 22, the money was really good, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, I mean, you'd make a check off the technical production, monthly check, and then you've got a gig guide as well, right?
Sure.
The station props you up. There's YMAG, da-da-da-da-da. And then there's all these gigs. You're collecting 3.5 there, 3.5 there, you know what I mean? Because then there's those amounts, 4,000 there, 3.8, you know what I mean, 5,000, you know what I mean? End of the month, boom, you got 50K, you know what I mean? Guaranteed, every single month, at 22. I'm like, what is this?
I saw the car you were driving then. I'm like, how man?
Something is happening here.
So even when you and Naked, you just started driving classic cars.
No, that was Naked.
That was Naked.
Yeah. So it shows you how good the money was and why, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for you to be buying, to be exploring hobby cars,
Yeah.
it means the money is real.
This one, Kia Sunday.
Yeah, you heard that Chevy Impala.
Yeah.
Good times, man. YFM was really good times. 5 was good times, but it was a double-edged sword.
At what point did you decide or was it the contract negotiation?
No. It was part and part, man. It's just it wasn't making any more sense. Like, how do I continue this? I'm famous. I'm broke. I've got one show a week. What am I doing the rest of the week? I need something much more fulfilling. It just that didn't make any more sense. There's a lot of planning that goes into a radio show. There's meetings during the week, submissions, this and that. I'm like, but I come out with
for 3 hours.
It's more than 3 hours because then this is during the week as well, and I come out with this little check. I've got kids, man. I'm broke. What is this?
Is it the reason why you jumped into Clubedo 8?
Yeah.
How did that move happen?
Well, but before I got into Clubedo 8, I was at I did what do you call it, Shizness, right?
Oh yeah.
Same company, right?
Yeah, you put us on there too.
Yeah.
I actually have a picture with you and Rashid.
Yeah, Rashid came much later.
Yes.
Yeah, but I was there first.
Yeah.
In fact, before me was Ukros Makera.
Yeah.
was the guy.
My home. That's my home.
Yeah, love him.
Yeah.
So I got on that, and you got to see how what a stepchild hip hop was. That's your show. That is your show. It's for the culture, but it's the bare minimum.
What was happening behind the scenes? I mean,
hey man, I worked with a terrible producer at that time. Yes.
What role were you playing?
Content producer.
Oh, snap. So you were the one bringing the talent.
Yeah.
That was an easy job.
Easy job.
You know everyone.
100%. I mean, but that's exactly what it is. We capture you. And you don't remember I said that earlier. We capture the pioneers, bring them here. They don't know TV, it's fine. They'll be content producers. There's a producer who will guide them. Just bring your black friends. Bring your black friends.
Was Brian Shaban your executive producer?
Yes, he was that time. It was great, but the technical side of things on the show, you realize that the resources were minimal. Remember the 10 tables they had?
Yeah. We shot.
Stenton.
Yeah.
They had Stenton 10 tables, the worst I've ever seen.
And you have Bell Drive, you had to do miracles with it.
That's the worst. And I realized that no, man, it's just
So your first job was time to get 10 tables there, SL1200s at least.
Ganjan.
No chance on it.
Your culture doesn't have money.
Eish.
Your culture doesn't have money, so they're not gonna get real tax. There's this plastic tent tables there, and then Clubedo 8 will get all the good equipment. They'll get the screens. They'll get and for me that was a wake up.
The super presenters.
100%. You know what I mean? For me that was a wake up call when I jumped to Clubedo 8. That really opened my eyes into the game. Which the game is bigger than just hip hop. You know what I mean? Like I got to discover which there are other walks of life, there are other cultures, genres, and each genre has got its own struggles. So I realized it's not just about hip hop anymore. I have to delve deep into these other cultures as well. If I'm going to be the producer for the show, I need to understand what goes into the mind of a house fan. You know what I mean? I have to understand the struggles of a house DJ.
That time you come from a background of I don't mess with house, I don't mess with...
Sell out.
Now now you must learn.
And that opened my eyes. I realized I understood the struggles. I was like, you know what? Our struggles are the same, Mus. They're the same, across all walks of life. And then I think that put me onto the greater SA, I got out of my hip hop mindset because now I have to produce. Because I'm walking in there, I'm still producing like a hip hop DJ, like a hip hop guy, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, man, what is this? You can't bring your hip hop friends here. What is this? Like, we need people. We need content. For the
Eyeballs
people.
on the show.
Content for the people. You know, if you're gonna bring hip hop, bring it in, package it in such a way that is palatable to the greater SA. You know what I mean? Give us Jabba, man. You know, give us Jabba. You can't bring your boom bap nonsense here. You know, and I learned then, you know, man, the game is bigger than just hip hop. The game is bigger than hip hop, you know, and you know, I love hip hop for what it has taught me, but there's a bigger plan out there. There's a bigger game at play, and if hip hop wants to be part of that, you need to understand it. You know, you need to understand that game as well. You know, we were stuck in little isolated pockets on our own, and you know, we didn't really care about what anybody else did. If you did that, you were a sellout, you know. But I came to understand that, you know, it was bigger.
Yo, I think Amu got the biggest flag in terms of the guys that used to go to the club when he made it.
Amu got into a serious. Amu got into a battle with. I wouldn't say a battle, a serious beef with Snaz D. I don't know if you know about that story.
I know the story, but please.
Snaz D is the baddest MC of the day. Jeez, man, the guy is going to Germany, representing SA, freestyler of note. Yeah, well, Amu, he's that guy, Muntu Wabantu, like he's got charisma, you know, he's got a following as well, you know, onto the semi-commercial, yeah, but he understands the game. He's the guy to take it to the next level.
Another load just dropped.
100%. Snaz D doesn't like that. Snaz D is part of the underground gang. He's the underground. You are a sellout. You know what I mean? You don't even rap. It was AK and Casper. It was AK and Casper. You know, Amu is Casper. You know, this guy here is AK, but the bassman of note. Yeah, but
Sure.
yes. We were at an event at Soweto, Orlando West, and Bionic plays this beat. Snaz D is the MC. Bionic was the king of beats and underground gems. He's that guy. He drops this instrumental. Snaz D starts rapping. Fuck Amu. Amu's in the crowd. Amu walks onto the stage calmly. Boom!
The version of the story I know that there was a chain involved.
Dog, chairs flew. Chairs flew, man. That was hip hop. For me, that was such a classic moment because what Snaz D was doing on that stage was bananas, bro. It was
Imagine the whole crowd, whoa!
It was actually so dope because, you know, Snaz D was a rapper, man. Like is a rapper. He just was that guy, and he the beat dropped. It felt like it was planned. The beat dropped, and he had us, and then the punchline.
Now everybody's looking at and he had to do something.
But you know, I was calm as hell. But that day,
Yeah, man. The game is the game. So there was a time when Hlabedu 8 and Live were like somehow competing. You had to.
outright competing.
Was it intentional that Hlabedu 8 played first, so that you know, or you had it first here?
No, look, it was all intentional, man. All intentional. If you know, we're in the business of viewership, right? And you try your best to outdo your competition. You know, so everything was intentional. Everything, you know. But what people didn't know is that behind the scenes,
You as Jula are buddies.
Jula and I went to the same school. Jula and I and Marvin, we're the greatest of buddies.
Wow.
But when it came to work, we work, bro. You know, we work, and I want to have the dibs on the next the biggest artist. I want to be there. I want Club 808 to have, you know what I mean, to have AKA first. I want Club 808 to have Robbie Malinga first. You know, our production needs to be groundbreaking. You know, we have to do things differently.
But 2-3 years later, the worst happened. Now Club 808 is playing 4:30.
Oh.
What transpired there?
I mean, that tells you, Uguchi, there's a shift in the appetite. You know, it tells you that you're not doing numbers. That's what that means, right? Because if your show's not seeing those big numbers, then we're not seeing ads. We're not seeing investment from, you know, there's no one buying ads. Therefore, let's put on something else, you know. And we have to innovate, bro. You know, I remember when we innovated to a point where we broke the format of the show. And I remember this was my idea, but we were in a place where it's either you get these numbers or we're done. Bro, we started introducing game shows to the show. You know, little games to the show. You know what I mean? So it became much more of it became a music show, but also it had a bit of a gaming element to it.
Family vibes.
It just made sense to me at the time. Which, okay, so why don't we just do that? We make Club 808 a lot more than it was a little cheesy, but damn, it worked. It worked, you know. Like, whew, we got to breathe for another season. You know, it really worked. It was really corny, but people loved it.
Wow.
You know, the people loved it, and it really is, you know, we got another 2-3 seasons out of that.
It looked like you sat there somewhere and studied the game so much that I don't know if it led you to you changing your name to your VIN number. What happened there?
No, man, how do I put this? So, as I said before, you know, Club 808 for me was a precursor to this, to who I became more than just hip hop. You know, I got to make friends. You know, I got to make friends with some big names, people who did not had no interest in hip hop, but I now obviously had to understand their walks of life, their paths, what they loved. I needed to understand my audience as well, and it led me to understanding the crowd on a DJ level. So when I get out there, okay, I know it's okay. You play hip hop, but there's you can play a bit of kwaito as well. You know, from hip hop to kwaito. I can also maybe pivot into house music. Actually, I love house music. Oh my gosh, I love house music. You know, like these are some of the honest truths that I had to confront. You know, because now you're hip hop. You know, you secretly love hip hop. You secretly love house.
Yeah.
But you're not telling anybody. You know, can't tell you, boy. This thing is, it's so beautiful and emancipating to
own it.
To own it and just love. You know what I mean? Love genres without barriers. You know what I mean? You can't. But now because our pens are sitting here, you know, with a saggy. Now there's this very nice song playing, and now I must act like I don't like it. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Yeah, because I come from that school of hip hop. You know, so Zen, that's short for Zenzele, is who I am right now. You know, not to say C Live is gone, but I've fully embraced Zen. And it's growth, man. It's growth, and I feel like being Zen is me reclaiming my entire heritage and birthright, who I am. You know, and it really, really speaks to me exploring creatively to the max, no barriers. You know, it gives me that grace to be able to explore. Whereas C Live needs to do hip hop, C Live, you know what I mean? C Live comes with baggage. C Live comes with a history, not baggage in a bad way. C Live.
I get it, but it's funny.
Comes with a history.
Yeah.
And
you can't like people will be shocked if they see C Live on their flyer. The same way you are feeling, they get there. How? Now what's going on?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Because I've done that.
When they sing Zen, there's no expectation.
Man, you're on your own. You know what I mean? I was looking at a flyer this morning. I'm thinking, yes, I'm playing in Soweto. And I've got a lot of fans in Soweto and friends as well. It was about confused. Hey, we see Sea Life, but this is Zen. Who are these people? You know what I mean? This is Sea Life. We know, but it's Zen. What's happening here?
On the screen there, but Club say Zen.
Bro, you know when I'm Zen, I will play. I'll do house. That's me. I'll do house, and it was hard to do Sea Live. And during the World Cup, I'll tell you this: 2010 World Cup, I played a lot at Latinova, right in Rosebank. And then Gqom was still called Taxi Music, right? Shunned upon music, like Taxi Music. And I'm a hip hop guy, bro. Hip hop pioneer, like boom, bap, mother, you know what I mean? But I see all these tourists in the country. And they're filled up in the club. What do you give these tourists? What do you give them? Okay, let's say you are on the world stage. Cholomonka, we want to hear what SA is about. Jeez, bro. What are you going to give them? I mean, now maybe, you know, but then we were so Americanized in our hip hop. What do you give them? You can't give them that.
It was so bad. Even
Mina, fuck it, Gqom. And that was bananas, because then, you know, the tourists were just like, yo, what is this? We love this, you know. Also goes back to this whole crate digging thing as a DJ. Crate digging, different sounds, different, you know what I mean? And that's just who I've always been, you know. It's like whenever I go to a different country, I switch on the radio station. I want to hear what they're playing. I want to hear, I'm curious, you know. I want to hear Kizomba. I want to hear drum and bass, you know what I mean? Because that's just who I am. I'm an eclectic mix of things. So 2010, fuck it, Gqom. Bro, like you could have seen the dollars that were flowing my way being thrown on the table. You know? Because it's like, what do we do when we're in a situation where we have visitors? What do we show off? Do we give them back what they gave us? Or do we give them us? You know? So Zen, I mean, last night I was in the studio doing a 3-step song. And for me, okay, I take a bit of Sea Live, a bit of Zen, Slanganisa. You know, I've got Stilo Makolite on a 3-step song. I've got a poet on a 3-step song. I've got a vocalist. I did this back in the day when I did a Gqom joint, and I put Maraza, Bar, who else? I forgot. But I had a rapper, Kwaito artist, Biza. You know what I mean? Rapper, Kwaito artist, all on one song. Because, I mean, when a DJ starts doing mashups, right? That's what I did. I'm like,
mashups are dope.
Thanks, bro. Because you hear different things, right?
Yo, guys.
You hear what...
Before you leave, give them your channel so that they see what I'm talking about. Anyway, continue.
You know, but that's what a guy like PH would do. This is a guy like DJ Zero or Chaotic would do, you know. You play a song and you hear different things within, you know, it could be house, it could be everything, you know. So I take that and I present it as music and I create that in studio. I mean, yesterday we created such a banger, 2 bangers, man. And, you know, I've decided that Zen needs to be with the people, you know. Zen needs to be with the people. I've done this hip hop thing. It's been nice. I can't talk to the YNs. I'm too old to be talking to the YNs. I've got grays showing, bro. You know, I can't. I mean, I can't be hanging with young niggas in Bram. I'm too old for that game, bro. You know? So now my time is up that side, and I think I need to explore something else. Because we're not one-dimensional, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Your social media, especially Facebook.
Why Facebook? Facebook is wild. It's a wild place.
So you're not scared of the views? Because sometimes I read them like, yo.
I don't care anymore.
I think about it, but I could never.
You know what? I'm glad, man. I'm glad that's who I am now. I'm so unhinged.
Nothing to lose.
Not in a dangerous way. Not in a dangerous way. But I've realized I come from a school where our pioneers and icons don't speak. So it's, oh, thank you. Oh, this, you know what I mean? It's just always keeping the peace and the status quo. You know, whereas when something is bullshit, it's bullshit, bro. It's nonsense. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to, and I think we are in an age where we coddle people too much. You know, we don't speak the truth. We don't tell it like it is. I think that's why a lot has gone wrong in hip hop as well, because we don't tell each other the truth. They talk, yo, bro, okay, yo, and then what? You know?
So you had a deal with Serato. How did that come about?
I had a deal with, it wasn't Serato, it was with the distribution company, Pro Sound.
Pro Sound, okay.
I used to be a vinyl DJ. Go to you know, as a hip hop DJ, you go through 35,000 records in 2 minutes. You know? So when you go to a gig, you're carrying 2 bags and they're heavy, and your bag starts, you know. And I discovered this thing online. I'm like, hey, bro, laptop, I'm so curious about this. So I fuck an email to the States.
Hey.
Yeah, was it the States or was it New Zealand? New Zealand. Fuck an email to New Zealand. New Zealand says, no, speak to these guys in SA. They are distributors. Went to Pro Sound. I dropped them an email. We had a meeting with them. They're like, boom, you are going to be our ambassador. Here's your stuff. Stop pushing it. That's how I became the first Serato ambassador in SA. And then I started pushing it to everyone. You know what I mean? Chigi, every DJ has a laptop now. You know, open with a, you know what I mean?
Branded.
Because when I did it, they were like, what the hell are you doing, bro? You know, what the hell are you doing? What is this? God, it was game changer.
You've always been first on the scene. And by either default or by intention, I don't know.
It's a gift and a curse, that thing.
Is it?
It is. You know, being a pioneer, you become a martyr. You suffer first, so others can walk. You know?
Oh, man.
But it's a passion. It's a passion thing.
At what point do you let go of passion? No matter what I do, I need to invoice.
You can't let go of passion. It's there. You just invoice for your passion. Yeah, invoice a passion. It's just you stop giving it for free, you know, willy nilly. But I mean, you can when you want to, only when you want to, you know. But your passion never goes away, bro.
Sure.
It's what keeps us alive, right? It's what keeps us going in this whole thing, you know, because without it, yeah, as good as dead.
So you mentioned earlier when you at the club as a break dancer, you had a son. And in 2015, I can just imagine how you lost your son.
Yeah.
Where were you and what happened?
It was such a wild story, man. You know, the night before, I was with some very close friends of mine. You know, whenever I look back, I still look at the picture, at our picture. You know, it was the happiest moment. You know, it was my happiest moment before it happened. You know, and then when I got home, for some odd reason, you know, I don't believe in a lot in prophetic, you know. I don't have prophetic beliefs, nani. I'm not one to be superstitious or anything like that. But for that some odd reason, that day, I had a very long conversation, you know, with my partner. You know, to a point where I was just like, yo, man, you know, my kids, blah, 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 you know, I'm just worried about my kids. Went to bed and jiggy, there's a fire in the house.
Same house that you had?
Sleeping. It was about 11 o'clock at night. Suddenly fire breaks out. You know what I mean? And such a wild thing, because then, you know, if you understand how quickly a fire spreads, you know, you'll understand that me trying to do anything was futile. You know, I mean, I literally opened the door to his room. His room was the only room in the house that had burglar guards. How strange is that? The only one. So you can't break the window. You can break the window all you want, but it's got burglar guards. Yeah, so, you know, I get in there, try to open the door, backdraft, flame comes back, hits you. You know what I mean? Hence the scars on my hands, you know. And, you know, he's my firstborn son, and, you know, we had a very close relationship with that boy, and he was my reason to live, you know. If you understand what it's like to have a child, it's the most beautiful thing, you know, because your life makes sense after that, right? Before then, it makes no sense.
Yeah, no, just
What was I doing this whole time, you know? And, you know, he was born, I was 22 years old when he was born. And when that happened, you know, it was, I literally lost my mind, you know. I literally walked around the street late at night, cold as hell. I was topless, I'm busy laughing, you know, turned into the Joker because of the amount of pain that I've gone through, you know. My hands are peeling, burnt. My face was burnt, nose was singed by the fire. The house is falling apart in the background, and I'm just walking around mindlessly. You know, people are trying to help, and I'm just like, there's no point anymore, you know. But there was a turning point. There was a turning point, and before the turning point, I'll tell you know, I first discovered anxiety then. I had no idea what anxiety was. Jeez, I discovered it then. I had a serious anxiety attack. You know, it literally feels like you're dying. I had that months later. You know, when finally everything settled. Not months later, but maybe a month later, when everything settled and I was left alone to think. Jeez, I've never felt anything so debilitating. I think a few years later, I finally hit my turning point where I was like, you know what? I have to, and what forced me to record a song, Cocoa Dreams, that speaks to my tragedy, which was my healing. The song was my healing, was the fact that close friends of mine and strangers that I've never met suddenly saw me as a beacon of hope for the loss of a child, for support for the loss of a child, because the loss of a child is something that is so unique. It's unnatural. We're supposed to go first. They get left behind, right? Not the other way around. Marvin, Live Amp, you know, my friend, he lost his son, same age, but a year later. But a year later. And obviously, who is it going to go to? Oh, Clive, bro, tell me how to get through this. Help me get through this. Laponje, even me, I'm still shattered. I don't know what to do. Like, yo, I don't know what to tell you, bro. But I realize that I have a greater purpose now in life. My purpose is to, you know, be there, be the light that shines for others. You know, I've had many people come up to me and for support for that specific kind of pain, because it's very specific. It's I mean, I struggled on my own trying to find support structures, you know, and I couldn't find any. I couldn't find any associations that help people, bereaved parents. There was one, but it let me down big time, and I was just left flabbergasted, and I was like, you know what, I'm on my own in this. It's the worst kind of pain, because you can't relate unless you've lost. This is a child. You cannot absolutely relate, you know. So, you know, I did Cocoa Dreams, which was a song where I got to speak, and shout out to Phoenix, T Phoenix, and who did the vocals. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful vocals. I mean, she did the most. I remember recording the song It was my first time A&Ring a song ruthlessly. Because
There's a reason for this. It's not vibes.
it's not vibes, bro. I was like, nope, I don't want that vocalist. Please bring back the song. This cannot be the lasting memory, you know? Took it to T Phoenix. P. Dot had already laid his vocals. P. Dot does not miss.
And his voice has that texture.
P. Dot, yeah. He recorded the lyrics to that song. I had given him a breakdown of what, you know, I'd gone through. But he took it and he made it bigger than it was. You know, but he's a storyteller. That's his job, right? That's the job of an MC. You know, he took that and he added so much to it. I could swear he was looking into my soul. That song was so poignant that when I listened to it the first time, I couldn't listen to it again. I said, I can't do this. I said, P. Dot, I don't know if I should release the song. I can't do this. The song makes me cry. Like I dropped it and I pulled back. You know, I pulled back in the sense that I didn't want to listen to it again, but you know, it became the vehicle for me the vehicle for my healing. And it became an extension of my hand to others who had been through the exact same thing that I've been through. I said, here I am. I can help you. I can, you know, hold your hand as well. You are not alone. That's what that song was about. You know, to this day, I still can't listen to it again. It's too deep.
How old was your son?
He was 11. He was a grown man, you know. I mean, we had dreams, bro. We had dreams. We had, you know. It's the first thing that came out of this world that said daddy. It said, yo. It said, yo, you're my pops, you know. He was, you know, he was that. And
do you know what started that fire?
It was I think it was a heater. It was in the middle of winter, but you know the investigators say it was electrical faults in the ceiling. You know, makes no difference now, does it? You know, makes no difference now.
For a different reason, I go to therapy now at my old age, and I remember I used to look at it as if, isn't this amalungule, you know? So I'm glad that music was part of that for your soul.
And therapy. I mean, I attended.
Oh, you did?
Oh.
I thought the first person you went to disappointed you.
Bro, you can't. No. There's an organization that deals with bereaved parents. That's what they promote themselves as. But, you know, my experience with them was terrible, you know. Just me calling and saying, hi, I need help. So what the hell do you want? You know what I mean? Like, yo, I was taken aback. Sorry, we're busy.
This NGO.
I'm like, yo, like, can you not maybe be a bit more gentle? Like, you know? So I was like, I'm on my own in this thing. I mean, I went through therapy, but Nakona, they can't relate. The only person you can't relate, they can't relate either. The only person that can relate to you, bro, is somebody that has lost a child like yourself. If you haven't lost a child, there's nothing you can tell me, honestly. We're not talking the same thing. It's a different kind of pain. Losing your mom and losing your dad and losing your child is three different things. Losing a parent and a child is different things. We can't have the same conversation. I promise you. We can't. You know, that's why I knew that, you know, I have to extend my hand.
Are you an overprotective father now?
Am I an overprotective father? No, I'm not overprotective. It's I'll tell you this. So, almost the same as how I post on Facebook. Ruthless, you know. I believe that in life, there's things that we cannot hide ourselves from. Everything that is life, we are part of. Death, everything. Happiness, death, hurt, all of it. And some things, you need to almost confront them before they happen. You need to confront your pain before it happens. Okay, so as I'm growing old, I am going to lose my mother. I am going to lose my dad. How am I going to feel? Sit there and experience it. Try and experience it as much as you can. I've done that, you know.
Aren't you traumatizing yourself though? Can you just wait so that it happens?
It's coming.
Damn.
You know, people don't want to, you know, people hide from these things.
We pretend like it's not going to happen.
So I did the exercise. I'm like, you know what? In my happiest moment, okay, I've got such a big family, but the reality is, one day because life is life, right? The reality is, I'm gonna lose someone. I'm gonna lose one of them, or all of them, God forbid, at the same time. You know what I mean? I went through the list. Mom, sitting there crying on my own. I promise you. Dad, I'm like,
That's crazy.
Dad, I'm like, pops, you know, all right, you know, because that's just how it is for men, right? As a man, pops passes like, pops, you know, shed a tear. But moms, it's different, you know, brother. And at no point did I ever think son, because it's unnatural. It's at no point did I entertain the thought of my kids. Or maybe I thought about it. I was like, hey, no, you know.
We block it, yeah.
You block it because that's not how it's supposed to happen, you know. So it is what it is. It's life, and these things do happen, bro. It's just the one pain is unique, you know. I mean, I think that's why we're talking about it now, because I mean, we could be talking about my dead uncle, but nobody cares about that. I mean, your uncle's gonna die anyway.
Yo,
But because
the way you sound, you remind me of one of these crew members. Like, hey, that guy's ruthless, you know.
it's the reality of life, man. You know, I think sometimes we take life a bit too seriously at times, you know? And then we act shocked at things that are gonna happen anyway. It's gonna happen, bro. Like, and I'm not just saying we need to embrace it, but you know, there's countries that Mexico has that whole festival of death, something La Muerte, whatever. And they they embrace it. You know what I mean? China, we run from it. It's like, dude, this is gonna happen anyway. Like, we need to change your relationship with death.
It's funny how we're sitting with Osman Mkondo, the DJ producer lawyer, and he was telling us that in life you're supposed to celebrate because this person is going to a better place. I don't remember how he put it, but or maybe it was not him, or he was saying, "For when the child is born, we are excited, but you are bringing a child to where? To this world." You must cry for you.
You know, I've been through that. It's a real tough one. Gee, man, am I really gonna bring a child into this? But it's all we have. Where else are you gonna bring a child into?
True.
It's all we have, bro, and it's part of what life is. Life is yin and yang. It is a delicate balance of good and bad, of good and evil. It is what it is. You know what I mean? There's no one is escaping this. Nobody's escaping this. We're all part of this thing, you know. And I don't believe that you celebrate death. Someone's going to a better place. There's no better place than this. I'm sorry. There's no other better place. We are here. Yeah, live it. You must live it. This is it. There's no better place. Because then, where are we? What is this that we're in? Is this a waiting room? A terrible waiting room? What is this?
I hear you. You know, the reason we're doing this podcast is to literally get the history and give flowers. And for me, you've done my first radio song. The first when you play my song for the first time, it was you. When I went to Tlapero 8, Radio North, Speedy, Dukes, I don't know if you remember.
I do remember. I think I still have that. I still have the pictures, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. when I launched my first mixtape, you were on the lineup. When I did a gig in Klerksdorp,
You know I forget these things, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Because to you,
Ngizwa ngani mina? I was there.
you were there. 2009 at Mill Park, Rocker Lounge.
Rocker Lounge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you for considering me for all these things.
No, man. You are the legend that we all know. You are a crate digger. You are a tastemaker. You are one of a few in the game.
I think it's a humanity thing, bro. Just, it's just being kind to your fellow man, I guess, and yeah.
The song that you were recording last night, when is it dropping? Was it called?
I don't know. I don't know when it's dropping, but it's a December joint. It's a December joint, man. I'm really experimenting here with sounds and music, more into the dance side of things. There's something in the pipeline with Uzakwe as well. Because that Sea Life guy just keeps on saying, at some point, he keeps saying, man, what are we doing our thing? You know what I mean? So there'll always be that as well. Excuse me. So we're planning something with Uzakwe, bro, and I'm not sure if this is premature, but I really am a fan of Uzakwe. I'm a fan of his work, and just when I heard this joint, I was just like, this is him. So I cannot wait to drop it. The joints that I was recording last night, I am hoping to drop this one song now because it's a festival song. It's a festive season joint. It's called Wololo.
Ululu.
Yeah, it features. Let me say it. Let me say it now. You're the first to hear it. It features DK. DK did it. She was on Coco Dreams, the remix.
Yes.
DK did it. Is a rapper, female rapper from PMB. Hard bars woman. She is a wordsmith of note. But she went 3-step, and my God, she kind of reminds me.
I beat her. Here we come.
That's what I keep saying, bro. She reminds me of Zingumalo. Zingumalo went from being a rapper, rapper,
then
to this.
Yes.
Life changed. You know what I mean? And this is what DK just did. I mean, for DK, the remix to Coco Dreams, by the way, as I said, I was very careful about A&R in the song. So it had P. O, it had all the hottest rappers, all but Black Les, MV, you know what I mean? DK did was in there. So for her to be on the same league.
Level, yeah.
Anyway, she's gone 3-step. My goodness. It features DK. It's got Mpumi, the vocalist. I've got a guy called Ushenge. Brilliant. And then I've got Stilo Makolete on it. Yeah. So I'm very careful about that part because I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not.
Guys, let it happen, man. Can it please happen? Because now I'm excited. I mean, please share your social media platforms, especially the one that you...
Especially that Facebook one.
No, the one, your mixes.
Oh, my mixes.
Yeah.
Where do my mixes live? You know...
YouTube and Instagram.
Then YouTube tends to take them down.
Okay, Instagram.
Instagram, I took down quite a lot of them because they do the same thing. I promise you, they block them. I mean, if my mixes were not playing on Channel O, I still have an entire 2 seasons of mixes. But anyway, check me out on TikTok. I have some of them there. C_live DJ. Same handle for Instagram has changed. Instagram, it's Zen South Africa on Instagram. But yeah, most of the mixes are on YouTube, DJ C Live on YouTube, and C_live DJ on TikTok.
Ladies and gents, Zen.
Came in as C Live, walked out as Zen. Wow.
Oh, man.
Wow, Zimban.
You are amazing, dog. You are so amazing.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
I don't know if you know how... I don't know if you know. Do you know?
I don't. No, I don't. I'm starting to, though.
You're one of one, dog.
Yeah, all of us, though. We're all one of one, right?
There
are more people.
Breakdancer, graffiti, DJing. And I don't even talk about just DJing. I'm talking about turntablism.
100%.
Not a lot can do that.
Bro, you know we used to go battle in Cape Town as breakdancers, right?
That's my
Like,
point.
that's
all
how
these three
we
things.
we represented Johannesburg. Like we were the guys that, you know what I mean?
Thanks, my G.
Shout out.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, that's enough.